So getting the bass guitar right is always a challenge, and especially in a huge, like an arena or a stadium, you know, a huge show, that's one of the most difficult sounds to really get right. Talk about how you approach that, because I know you got some unique things you do.
It's been my experience over the years that most of the time when I get an input from the stage that's labeled bass guitar, it has too much emphasis on the actual low frequencies. It's out of balance. So almost without exception, I have to put a shelf on the low end. I don't go crazy doing any sort of tight band EQ on anything really, but I'll just shelf it to basically use it like a tone knob to offset whatever the person playing bass on stage has worked themselves into. A lot of times you have an amplifier on stage that's putting out one thing. The bass guitarist on stage, his sound might be fine, but if you take the direct out off of that, or you're taking the direct out off the guitar that has tone knobs on it that are biased by the amplifier, you could end up with something that doesn't sound anything like what you really want. And you could have no high end and all low end, or vice versa. And so I typically find more often than not, you get more low end, and I go right to a shelf, and I just shelf it. I found that having a conversation with the person who's very comfortable on stage is, unless there's a serious problem, is not worth it. Just let them enjoy themselves and play the show like they're comfortable, and I can fix it out here. Only in really serious situations will I go and try and source out with the bass tech or the player what's going on with the output. But yeah, so I'll use something like a shelf like this displayed here. We'll use this bass channel as an example, but yeah, there we go. And I'll just put a shelf like this in here, and that right there will basically clean up or just bring it a little more in balance with what I'm looking for, because with a large PA and the sub bass that's available and just the general way those PAs behave and rooms behave, these are areas where you always got plenty of this, and I don't want more of it. Yeah,
I'm amazed at how much that just
and it's real simple
cleans
stuff.
it up. Yeah.
There's no point in trying to EQ a particular offending frequency here, because honestly you'll affect a note on the guitar. So I just put a nice shelf in here, and that solves 95% of my issues right there. So I would do this, and then what I also might do is I might go and add dynamic EQ. So I would go and add a dynamic EQ to further brighten or control that otherwise slightly muddy bass sound. And it just makes it pop out in the mix. So now what we have is a bass guitar that, if it's balanced properly, it sounds nice and clean. We're not overly emphasizing the low end. We have something that sits in the mix where it's supposed to sit. You don't have to touch the fader the entire show unless there's some real particular reason to, and a solo or something like that. But generally it sits as a foundation right there. You're not listening. You don't have to strain to hear it. It's not lost in any other low frequencies on the stage. You hear a bass guitar playing on stage. That's just, it's my preference. I don't ever want to hear the bass guitar lost in the mix and just part of this foundation that's smeared together. I like to hear it.
Yeah, so, I mean, you should hear it and you should feel it at the same time.
You should feel it at the same time, and absolutely. And doing a shelf like that and a dynamic EQ to taste, you're not getting rid of any of that impact. In fact, if anything, you're making it more real and easy to hear, because you've removed the overemphasis, and you're not trying to, you don't end up reaching for, or a system engineer doesn't end up trying to EQ that out of a PA in the middle of the show. It's like, well, no, just deal with the input, fix it at the input, and you can leave all that stuff alone.
So do you have a mic on the cabinet that you're blending in with this?
You know what? There's almost always a mic on the cabinet when I inherit a show, or if it's my show and I've started from day one in rehearsals, no mic on the cabinet. I've never found that to be useful for what I'm doing. I'm not saying never, ever, but at some point I might find that I really need a mic on the cabinet, but I'm about 31 years in and I haven't really liked using it
Maybe
yet.
in 50 years,
maybe
the biggest fans in the world.
Somebody, yeah, I'll be, oh, that worked. Yeah, so in the meantime though, that it's, as you know, we've discussed at times, it's very difficult to blend those two together. and I've got another mic leaking on stage, and it's usually right next to the drum kit.
Right.
And more often than not, 5 feet from the snare mic. So I really don't use it.
Right.